There's a certain stillness in the way the late afternoon sun spills through my home office window, casting long, lazy shadows across my desk. I'm Amelia, 38, a graphic designer who's carved out a little world of color and creativity in this quiet suburban pocket just outside Denver, Colorado. My days are spent coaxing ideas into shapes and lines, headphones on, lost in the hum of my own thoughts, while the neighborhood outside hums its own uneventful tune. It's a life I've built with intention, a life I share with Ethan, my husband of 12 years. He's 42, a psychology professor at the local university, a man whose mind is a labyrinth of questions and theories, always probing the edges of what it means to be human. I've always admired that about him, his relentless curiosity, the way he can dissect a single thought until it unravels into a dozen more. But lately, I've noticed something else beneath that sharp intellect, a kind of restlessness that flickers in his eyes when he thinks I'm not looking. Our marriage has always been a steady thing, a quiet harbor in a world that often feels too loud. We've weathered the usual storms, long hours, the grind of routine, the occasional clash of stubborn wills, but there's a foundation here, built on late-night talks and shared silences. Still, over the past few years, I've felt a subtle shift in Ethan, like a current running beneath still water. He's taken to musing aloud about the nature of desire, trust, and the boundaries we draw around ourselves. What if we pushed beyond what society expects of us? He'll ask over a glass of wine on our patio, the evening air cool against our skin. Or, what if we explored the edges of who we are, really dug into the parts we keep hidden? I've always laughed it off, rolling my eyes with a playful smirk, chalking it up to his academic mind spinning hypotheticals for the sake of debate. After all, Ethan's always been one to poke at the status quo, to question why we accept the rules we do. I figured it was just that. Thought experiments, nothing more. Our life together, on the surface, is a comfortable one. Most evenings, you'll find us on that same patio, a bottle of red between us, the conversation drifting from philosophy to art, to the mundane details of our day. I'll talk about a tricky client project, the kind that makes me want to pull my hair out, and he'll counter with a story about a student who challenged him in class, his voice lighting up with pride. There's a rhythm to it, a predictability that's both comforting and, if I'm honest, a little stifling at times. I catch myself wondering if Ethan feels it too, that itch for something beyond the familiar. I see it in the way he stares off into the distance sometimes, his fingers tapping restlessly against the arm of his chair, like he's searching for an answer to a question he hasn't yet asked. I woke to the gentle nudge of a warm mug against my hand, the rich aroma of coffee pulling me from the haze of sleep. It was a crisp Saturday morning in early autumn, the kind where the air feels sharp and clean, and through the bedroom window, I could see the leaves outside turning gold and crimson, a fiery tapestry against the pale sky. Ethan stood beside the bed, his dark eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place, a secretive smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Morning, Amelia," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "I've got a surprise for us, a weekend getaway, time to reconnect and explore." His words hung in the air, layered with a meaning I couldn't yet grasp, and I raised an eyebrow, sitting up against the headboard as I took the coffee from him. "Explore, huh? You're being awfully cryptic, Professor," I teased, sipping the brew, its heat grounding me as I studied his face. He just chuckled, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes, and told me to pack light for an overnight trip. Intrigued but skeptical, I slid out of bed, the hardwood cool under my bare feet, and rummaged through my closet for cozy sweaters, a pair of worn jeans, and the essentials I'd need for a night away. As I folded each item into a small duffel bag, I kept stealing glances at Ethan, trying to read him, but he busied himself with his own packing, his movements quick and purposeful, like he was eager to get moving. A few hours later, we were in the car, heading west into the heart of the Rocky Mountains. The drive stretched over 3 hours, the roads winding and narrow, flanked by towering pines that seemed to pierce the sky and jagged peaks dusted with the first hints of snow. The air grew cooler with every mile, seeping through the cracked window and brushing against my skin, carrying the scent of earth and evergreen. I leaned my head against the glass, watching the landscape shift, but my attention kept drifting to Ethan. He was unusually quiet, his hands gripping the steering wheel with a tension I wasn't used to seeing. Every so often he'd glance my way, offering a small, reassuring nod, but there was something beneath it, a nervous energy that made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't name. "You okay over there?" I asked at one point, my voice light, trying to ease whatever was brewing in the silence. He just smiled, a tight, fleeting thing, and said, "Yeah, just want this to be perfect for us." When we finally arrived, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows over a secluded valley where our destination waited. An old, rustic steam bath, its weathered stone facade nearly swallowed by overgrown ivy. It looked like something out of a forgotten story, hauntingly beautiful, tucked away from the world as if it held secrets in its very walls. I stepped out of the car, the gravel crunching under my boots, and took it in, letting the ancient aura of the place wash over me. The steam bath seemed to hum with a quiet energy, a whisper of stories etched into its stones. I followed Ethan inside, the heavy wooden door creaking shut behind us, sealing us into a world apart from everything I knew. He led me through a dimly lit foyer, the air already tinged with warmth, and handed me a soft white towel with a look that carried unspoken weight. "Change and meet me in the main chamber," he said, his voice a low murmur that sent a shiver down my spine despite the growing heat. I nodded, clutching the towel, and slipped into a small changing room, peeling off my layers until I was bare, wrapping the fabric around myself like a shield. The vulnerability of it prickled at my skin, but I pushed the feeling aside, stepping out with a deep breath. Now, I'm walking down a narrow stone corridor, the walls rough and cool under my fingertips as I steady myself. The air grows warmer with every step, thicker too, heavy with steam that clings to my skin like a second layer. I can feel it seeping into my pores, a damp embrace that makes my breath catch. The scent of eucalyptus and lavender blooms around me, sharp and soothing all at once, as I near the main bath chamber. My bare feet pad softly against the slick stone floor, the sound swallowed by the low hum of water somewhere in the distance. When I step through the arched entrance, the space opens up before me, cavernous and ancient, like stepping into a forgotten temple. The stone walls glisten with condensation, droplets catching the flickering golden light of lanterns hung at uneven intervals. Shadows dance across the expanse, shifting and alive, and the heat presses against me, a tangible weight that makes my head swim for a moment. I take another step, my feet slapping gently against the wet floor, and that's when I see them. 5 men, strangers to me, standing in a loose semicircle near the center of the room. They're dressed only in towels wrapped low around their waists, the steam obscuring their features just enough to make them ghostly, unreal. But their eyes, those I can feel, piercing through the haze, locked on me with an intensity that stops me cold. My heart slams into my throat, a wild, frantic thing, and I freeze where I stand, every muscle tensing as if I could bolt at any second. Fear claws its way up my spine, sharp and electric. My pulse is a drum in my ears, racing so fast I'm sure they can hear it. My palms, despite the suffocating heat, are slick with sweat, and my breath comes in shallow, ragged bursts, barely filling my lungs. I want to turn, to run, but my feet are rooted to the stone, betraying me. One of the men steps forward, his presence cutting through the steam like a blade. He's tall, broad-shouldered, with a faint scar tracing a jagged line across his cheek, visible even in this dim, misty light. His movements are slow, deliberate, almost predatory, and my stomach twists as he closes the distance between us. He reaches out, his hand steady, and lightly touches my wrist. His fingers are cool against my overheated skin, a stark contrast that makes me flinch, though I don't pull away. The contact sends a jolt through me, a mix of dread and something I can't name, something that stirs in the pit of my chest. My mind is a storm, questions crashing against each other like waves in a tempest. Who are these men? Why are they here, waiting in this hidden place? And where is Ethan? Where is the one person who's supposed to anchor me in this moment? I turn my head, desperate for a familiar face, and that's when I catch a glimpse of him. In the corner of the room, his reflection wavers in a large fogged-up mirror mounted on the wall, distorted by the steam, but unmistakable. Ethan stands there, completely out of place in this primal, humid space, dressed in a dark suit that seems to absorb the faint light around him. In his hand, he holds a glass of red wine, the liquid catching a glint of light as he swirls it. I'm still standing here in the steam bath, the heat wrapping around me like a living thing, pressing against my skin until it feels like I'm melting into the haze. The air is so thick it's almost a weight on my chest, each breath pulling in a faint, herbal bitterness that lingers on my tongue, sharp and unfamiliar. Steam clings to my eyelashes, blurring the edges of everything, making the world feel like a dream I can't quite wake from. Droplets of condensation trace slow paths down my arms, and beneath my bare feet, the stone floor is slick, cool in patches where the heat hasn't fully claimed it, a grounding contrast to the oppressive warmth everywhere else. Every sound is amplified in this cavernous space, the rhythmic drip of water echoing from some unseen corner, the faint rustle of movement from the men standing just beyond my line of clear sight. It's a silence that isn't silent at all, a quiet so heavy it feels like it's waiting to be shattered. My mind is a tangled mess, racing in circles as I try to make sense of this moment. I think back to all those late-night conversations with Ethan, the ones I'd dismissed as intellectual games over glasses of wine on our patio. He'd talk about desire, about boundaries, about what it means to step outside the lines we draw for ourselves. What if we let go of what's expected? He'd muse, his voice always calm, probing. I'd laugh, brush it off, tell him he was overthinking things. But now, standing here, I see it for what it was. Not just talk. Preparation. A slow, deliberate laying of groundwork for something I never saw coming. The realization hits me like a punch, sharp and cold despite the heat. Anger flares up, hot and immediate, burning through the confusion. How could he blindside me like this? How could he bring me here, into this strange, charged space, without a word of warning, without my clear say-so? I feel exposed, vulnerable in a way that goes beyond the thin robe clinging to my damp skin. I'm part of something I didn't choose, and that betrayal stings deeper than I can put into words. But there's something else, too, flickering beneath the anger. Something I can't quite pin down. It's not just resentment or fear. There's a whisper of curiosity, a pull to understand what Ethan sees in this, what he's chasing that I've never grasped. Is it freedom? Is it some raw, unfiltered truth about ourselves? I don't know, and that uncertainty gnaws at me, mixing with the heat and the weight of every eye in this room. I steal another glance at Ethan's reflection in the mirror across the chamber. He hasn't moved an inch, still standing there in his dark suit, so out of place among the primal simplicity of this place. His posture is calm, almost detached, like he's watching a carefully controlled experiment play out. The glass of wine in his hand tilts slightly, catching a sliver of lantern light, and I can't tell if he's even looking at me or if his gaze is lost somewhere beyond. It's infuriating. That stillness, that distance, when I'm drowning in the intensity of this moment. The man who touched my wrist earlier has stepped back now, rejoining the others in their loose semicircle. They're all so still, their forms half lost in the steam. but I feel their attention like a physical thing, a pressure that makes my skin prickle. They're waiting. I realize it with a jolt that sends my heart racing all over again. They're waiting for me. For some sign, some gesture, some unspoken permission to shift this moment into something else entirely. The weight of that realization is crushing, pinning me in place as surely as if the stone beneath me had turned to quicksand. My robe feels heavier now, the damp fabric sticking to my shoulders, my waist, every inch of me hyper-aware of its presence, of how little stands between me and whatever comes next. The heat seems to pulse in time with my heartbeat, each throb a reminder of the choice hanging in the air, thick as the steam itself. I take a deep breath, I stand there, my breath shallow, the steam swirling around me like a living veil, and I feel the weight of the decision pressing down harder than the humid air. My fingers tremble as they hover over the tie of my robe, the damp fabric clinging to me like a second skin. I glance once more at Ethan's reflection in the mirror, his figure still and unreadable, and something inside me shifts. Maybe it's the curiosity that's been gnawing at me, or maybe it's the need to understand what he's been trying to show me all along. Whatever it is, I make a choice. I decide to trust him, to step into whatever this is, even if I can't see the full picture. My hands move with a slow, deliberate resolve, untying the knot at my waist. The robe slips from my shoulders, falling to the wet stone floor with a soft, heavy thud, leaving me bare to the mingled caress of cool air and hot steam on my skin. The vulnerability of this moment crashes over me like a wave. My heart is a wild thing, hammering so hard I'm sure it echoes through the chamber. I'm exposed in every way, physically, yes, but emotionally too, stripped down to the rawest parts of myself. There's no hiding here, no shield to cling to, just me standing in the center of this ancient, humid space, feeling the weight of every gaze. But there's something else beneath the fear, something unexpected, a flicker of liberation, a sense of shedding not just the robe, but the constraints I've carried for so long. The men in the semicircle shift closer now, their movements slow, almost reverent, as if they're part of some unspoken ritual. I don't ask who they are, don't seek names or stories. There's an understanding that this isn't about personal ties or identities. It's about something deeper, something primal, sensation, exploration, the closeness that transcends the physical, reaching into the emotional. Their presence closes in, and I feel the first tentative brush of a hand against my arm, the touch light but electric, sending a shiver through me despite the heat. Another hand grazes my shoulder, warm and steady, and I'm hyper-aware of every point of contact, every subtle shift in the air around me. The steam seems to amplify it all, the humidity blending with the warmth of breath near my ear, the faint whispers of encouragement or admiration that weave through the hiss of the chamber. The words aren't clear, more like a murmur of sound, a current that pulls me deeper into the moment. My skin prickles with each sensation, a tapestry of heat and touch weaving together until I can't tell where one ends and another begins. It's overwhelming, but not in the way I expected. There's no rush, no chaos, just a slow, deliberate dance of exploration that feels almost sacred in its intensity. I'm acutely aware of Ethan's presence, even without turning to look. I can feel him there, in the corner of my vision, a constant anchor even as I let myself drift into this uncharted space. Knowing he's watching doesn't bring shame or guilt, as I thought it might. Instead, it steadies me, like a tether keeping me from floating too far. My mind is a storm of sensation and thought, but beneath it all, there's a clarity forming. I'm discovering something about myself, unearthing desires I didn't know I had, parts of me that have been buried under years of routine and expectation. And I realize, with a raw honesty that almost startles me, that I'm not just enduring this, I'm embracing it. There's a freedom here, a wild, untamed sense of being alive in a way I've never felt before. It's as if I've stepped out of my own shadow, standing in the light of something new, something true. The moments stretch on, each one layered with a quiet intensity that builds and builds until it feels like the air itself is charged with it. Hands trace paths across my skin, not possessive but curious, as if mapping out the edges of this shared experience. The warmth of bodies near mine, the mingling of breath in the heavy air, it's a closeness that transcends the I'm sitting on the edge of a weathered stone bench in the now empty bath chamber. The coolness of the rock seeping through the fresh towel wrapped around me. My skin is still flushed, a lingering warmth from the heat of the steam and the intensity of what just unfolded here. The air has settled, the once thick haze of vapor thinning out, leaving a faint dampness that clings to everything. It's cooler now, a subtle chill brushing against my exposed shoulders, and the silence feels heavier than ever, as if the ancient walls are holding their breath, waiting for what comes next. The flickering lantern light casts soft, wavering shadows across the stone, and I can still hear the faint drip of water echoing somewhere in the distance, a reminder of the charged moments that filled this space not long ago. I'm lost in my thoughts, replaying every sensation, every unspoken boundary crossed, when I hear the soft echo of footsteps approaching. My heart gives a small, involuntary jump, and I look up to see Ethan emerging from the dim corridor. His presence feels different now, less distant, more grounded, as if he's shed the detached observer role he held earlier. He's changed out of that dark suit, now wearing a simple shirt and jeans, his hair slightly damp, curling at the edges from the lingering humidity. He doesn't say anything at first, just walks over with a quiet purpose and sits beside me on the bench. The space between us is small, intimate, and I feel the warmth of his nearness, a stark contrast to the cool stone beneath me. He holds out a glass of water, his fingers brushing mine as I take it, and that brief touch sends a ripple through me, a silent acknowledgement of everything we've just navigated together. I sip the water, the cold liquid grounding me, but my mind is still a storm of questions. Did I go too far? Does he think I've broken something between us? Does he regret bringing me here, pushing me into this uncharted territory? The tension hangs heavy in the air, thicker than the steam ever was, and I can't bring myself to meet his gaze just yet. I stare at the glass in my hands, watching a droplet slide down its side, mirroring the uncertainty sliding through me. I want to ask, to spill every doubt and fear, but the words stick in my throat, caught behind a wall of vulnerability I'm not sure I'm ready to breach again so soon. Then he speaks, breaking the silence with a voice that's steady, almost reverent, like he's been holding these words for a while. You've become stronger, Amelia. Now you know yourself. His tone carries a weight that pulls my eyes to his, and when I look at him, I don't see judgment or regret. I see pride, a deep, quiet understanding that cuts through my doubts like a blade through mist. His dark eyes hold mine, steady and unflinching, and in that moment, I realize this wasn't about betrayal or recklessness. It was about trust, about diving into the depths of who we are, not as individuals, but as a pair bound by something deeper than routine or expectation. It was about peeling back layers we didn't even know we had, exposing raw truths in a way that only we could share. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding, the tension in my shoulders easing just a fraction. I don't regret it, I admit, my voice quieter than I intend, but firm. I thought I might, when it was happening, when I felt so exposed. But now, sitting here, I feel more connected to you than I ever have. Like we've uncovered something hidden, something just ours. My words hang between us, vulnerable but true, and I see the faintest shift in his expression, a softening at the edges of his mouth, a warmth that tells me he feels it too. We've always had a bond, a foundation built over years of shared silences and late-night confessions. But this is different. It's as if we've carved out a new space for ourselves, A secret chamber within our relationship that no one else could ever touch or understand. The closeness that transcends the physical, reaching into the emotional. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.